So, how have you been? How's your morning
Good, good,
or
good, good.
afternoon?
Good morning, Doha. Thanks for your time. Specifically, you spent a valuable time from your routine schedule. Welcome to our podcast. Yeah, specifically, it's a great pleasure to talk with someone who has been at the frontline operations across world's largest FMCG footprints in the region. And the today's topic is more about the need of the digitalization in safety and in the industry. So my colleague Somak is there who will take us through some of the questions around it and what practical issues you face. You can better explain, and you can also enlighten us some more visions, I would say, in the digitalization front. That's it from my end. Somak, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jignesh, and thanks, Doha, for being on the podcast today. So, everybody, welcome to the Maximal Podcast. Every couple of weeks, we speak with a globally renowned expert about a subject that is about industrial software and heavy industry in general. Today, we have
Right.
Doha with us, who's a HSE veteran. Doha, can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your journey thus far?
So, okay, well, thank you first of all for welcoming me to this podcast. It's really my pleasure as well. And I'm originally a chemical engineer. I've spent over 20 years working in safety, health, and environment, mainly in the food and beverage and consumer packaged goods industry. And in my most recent role, I'm overlooking teams across Africa, Middle East, and South Asia. And throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to work in complex, high risk environments, helping organizations improve operational risk excellence while protecting people, essentially. And the beauty of working in EHS is that you're almost physically plugging in the cables of frontline with the main cable of leadership. And I was one amongst many others actually that are mobilizing the shift in EHS from just compliance to building foundations and leadership, culture, and understanding human behavior and how this exactly necessitates the use of innovation and tech and so on to be able to evolve. And over the past few years, I've become increasingly passionate about digital transformation and how technology, data, and now artificial intelligence essentially can fundamentally change the way that we manage risk. So I genuinely believe we're witnessing the biggest transformation leap in the history of EHS in general.
Fantastic. You're off to a good start. I'm a metallurgical engineer myself. Though I have not done much with a degree, like many people of my generation, I chose to move to software. But in my current role as the person leading GTA for Maximal, I'm at the intersection of software and industry now. So that's a good place to be. So tell us a little bit about where you think this function is at the moment. What is the state of the function in 2026, in July of 2026?
So I think EHS is at an incredibly critical crossroad. Historically, our profession has been built around compliance, inspections, audit, investigations, and so on after they happened. And those activities remain important, absolutely. But today's organizations operate with high competition and growth and ambitious targets. And of course, VUCA environments as well, and even more complex dynamics across the globe. So supply chains are global and operations are automated. Climate risks are changing, they're increasing. Mental health has also become a major workplace issue. And employees themselves, they expect transparency and psychological safety. So those are all emerging, I would say, and changing needs that are coming to the table. And executives expect EHS to contribute to business performance and reflect a defined ROI, not just simply preventing incidents. The role of EHS itself is evolving from compliance to strategic business partners. So we're no longer compliance guardians. And the leading organizations are embedding EHS into things like operational excellence or ESG or business strategy and so on. And one thing will remain essential, which is that safety shouldn't slow the business down. It's essentially should make the business actually stronger.
Fantastic. So tell me about this transition from compliance orientation to actually adding to business value, being accretive to the business. What does this transition look like in practice? How does it affect the life of a HSE professional such as yourself and to your stakeholders?
Right. So basically, the thing is that we're no longer just looking at the basics and to make sure that we're complying to legal legislations and that's it. Safety or EHS in general is much more than that. It's really about protecting your people because they are your number one asset, and that you need to do through solid and strong leadership. You need to do through building a very solid culture, and one where it's not just a safety culture. So the overall organizational culture needs to nurture this kind of psychological safety, as I said before, and this sort of buy-in to that. I'm not going to say safety is the number one priority. Safety is essentially it's a basic, it's a fundamental. You know, it's not because priorities change. So I don't want to say it's the first priority. That doesn't change. That is something that is just foundational for everyone. And I think that having this sort of human or personal angle to EHS and safety, and specifically, is the number one shift that people need to make. Organizations are still focusing that safety is just a compliance game, while actually it's much more than that. If people feel safe and healthy in your organization, they will essentially give you a lot more than just their basic roles or their duties at work.
Got it. So does this transition impact the KPIs that you work towards?
Absolutely. So this is a great question, actually, because how it impacts the KPIs is that we are no longer, actually, we were never interested in just the lagging indicators like incidence frequency rates or things like lost time injuries or lost days at work. That's not essentially what really matters, right? What matters is things like the engagement indices of people, how people are, what's people's feedback on cultural maturity or on leadership, and how leaders are actually overlooking safety in their workplaces, or are risk assessments really reflecting reality? Are they reflecting the real modes of work, and are they really protecting people? So those sorts of things, including like their feedback on training. So there are so many leading indicators that are related to feedback or what frontline really thinks, compared to what leaders want to see or organizations just want to see as a lagging indicator.
Right. Also, does HSE vary across sectors? Because if LinkedIn is right, you worked for some of the major consumer brands in the world, and there's a promise that a consumer brand makes to the universe, and that's quite different from, let's say, how a oil refinery would function in terms of how consumers perceive them. And so, I mean, does that affect the HSE culture in any way? Because it's not, perhaps for major CPG brands, it's not just about ensuring that manufacturing is safe. It's also about ensuring how your internal culture meshes with the with how your brand is perceived in the world. Does the sector impact the EHS culture? Is what I'm asking. I think.
It certainly does. So the principles of safety are universal, but the human behavior itself is not. So communication styles and attitudes towards authority, risk perception, the community itself, as you rightly mentioned, decision making, these are all varying significantly across cultures. And global leaders and organizations, in fact, they should standardize the expectations, but localize the implementation itself of EHS. So there, essentially, there should be one global policy or one global framework, but many culturally appropriate ways of delivering that policy. And to do that, you need to spend time listening locally, whether internally within your organization or externally to authorities and the community and so on and so forth. And empowering local leaders is also one very, very important thing. So we simply say empowering, but empowering is a very, very deep word that we sometimes underestimate in action rather in definition. And sharing global learning is also one thing that is very, very vital in for sectors, for specific sectors. So learning from the Americas or learning from Asia, in Africa, or in the Middle East is also a vital element. So it is again, it's a very it's always overlooked how those learnings are cascaded across the organization. And the strongest global organizations combine consistency with cultural intelligence. So yes, you need to maintain the consistency part, but you need to have a huge consideration for the culture and the local needs of different markets and sectors.
On that note, your portfolio covers half the globe: Africa, Middle East, and South Asia. How does the EHS culture differ across these broad regions?
Sorry, you said how does?
How does the EHS culture and the safety culture more generally, or more specifically, vary across these regions: Africa, Middle East, and South Asia?
Right. So again, there are different local legislations. Those are one of the things that impact the cultures. Not necessarily the most important one, but they do. So the lack of legislation also, or the lack of governance of legislation, or the implementation of it, the enforcement of legislation also impacts culture, right? So across the different countries in those regions where you have stronger enforcement of legislation, you will see better adherence in general to EHS requirements, whether from the organization or from the leaders or the front line. And so that's one important aspect. Another one is just like the cultural or the traditions within a certain market or country or so on, where you have, those are just like cultures within the country. So they are not countries, for example, that are very process driven. They're more of adaptive countries or adaptive cultures where whenever they come to an issue or whenever they come to a problem, they react to it. And therefore, this is where you see the lack of adherence to a certain written process. So unlike, for example, areas like Europe, where you see very strong adherence to processes and systems, in itself that can lead to incidents because the system or the process can be written in a way that can lead you to an incident if it's not properly developed. You can see the total opposite of that in areas like, for example, Africa or the Middle East, where they're more adaptive, as I mentioned. So those are just examples, but there are so many other aspects in addition to what I said. But in general, of course, the cultural differences across a region where it's not consistent in itself is definitely a challenge.
Right. And of course, when you work for a globally renowned brand that's known probably in all 200 countries, you always have to be cognizant that any bad news can travel the world really fast. And
Yeah.
no matter what the local norm, you have to adhere to certain, the best, I mean, the highest ideas of what constitutes safety and HS, I'm guessing, for a globally renowned brand. Right.
Sure.
So now moving to
So
tech and AI. Sorry, Jinesh, you were saying.
yeah, please continue.
So software has been a big part of heavy industry and process engineering for the last 10 years and AI for the last 5. How does it impact EHS?
You're now addressing the systems and AI part, right?
Yeah. How does software technology, information technology, and AI particularly impact EHS?
So we've spent literally decades analyzing reactively, analyzing yesterday. And
Right.
now AI allows us to manage tomorrow, which is a huge shift in mindset and thinking and ways of working and so on. And recently, we've stepped into a completely new era of AI. So not just technology and systems or digitization. The AI element is a whole new dimension. And traditional software helped us digitize paper processes. Now
Right.
AI goes further than this, so we can interpret information, we can identify patterns, we can support better decision making, and it helps us automate certain tasks, pulling up to the speed of having this mass data that requires days and weeks of processing, literally. Um, so now how this looks like in the EHS field is like, just imagine combining things like incident history and inspections and audit results and maintenance records and permits and weather even and contractor performance, production schedules and efficiencies and so on. AI can combine all of those and identify relationships that no individual could have realistically detect.
Right.
Or even if they would have required extensive time and resources that no organization can sustainably afford over a long period of time. So the conversation is really shifting from someone had an accident yesterday to AI helping us ask the question of who is going or who is at most risk tomorrow. Okay, which is a very, very vital shift. And we'll see AI supporting things like predictive risk assessments or predictive incident management or incident, I would say, predictive analysis of incidents, dynamic risk registers, intelligent permit to work, also the multilingual safety communication or EHS communication, without having a lot of challenges in translation or in cultural moderation and so on. Things like computer vision for spotting unsafe conditions or for monitoring unsafe driving behaviors or fatigue. Um, all those sorts of things, and even one additional very important one is the personalization of safety coaching. So you can have that through the AI agents that are available now. So personalized messages and safety coaching depending on your behavior and so on. And all of those elements that I just mentioned, they should enhance human expertise, right? And the best EHS decisions will come from combining human experience with machine intelligence. So I would like to positively think that AI is not here to replace everyone. It will probably replace those who cannot make good use of it or be able to compete with it with their own human intelligence. That's what I truly and deeply think.
So I read a few of your LinkedIn posts and you talk about culture a lot. And so how do you think culture interacts with technology? We have seen in the last few decades that oftentimes Tech moves at a pace faster than the organization can adapt. Culturally, I mean, there must be a
Yes.
shift as well. How do you think that these two interact?
So this is really one of the challenges, right? Because AI comes with a whole lot of speed, and we are not really equipped or literate enough to adapt to this speed or compete with it in a way or another. And culture takes time. It's not something that just happens overnight, right? So it is something that needs to. So culture is essentially built through trust, psychological safety, which are, by the way, two very different things. Transparency, communication, so on and so forth, and consistent practices from the organization and the leaders within that organization, right? So this is really how the culture of an organization is developed and how it evolves. And having a tool that is very, very fast with something that takes years and years to develop is not really, I would say, it's a big challenge. And therefore, what I see is an important thing is not to try to um, believe or make people believe that that culture will change quickly. It's rather to try to slow down the noise and the hype around AI and the light speed that it brings, and just fit it into the organization as a tool rather than as this is what's going to change all of our lives. Yes, it will change our life, but it needs to be part of the culture. It's not that the culture needs to be part of AI. It's really the opposite way around.
Right. Now, to digress a little bit, you mentioned the expression psychological safety quite a few times in the last 20 minutes. So allow me to ask you to explain it a little bit. What does psychological safety mean in our discipline?
Yes, so really it becomes very, very important in this era of AI, right? Um, Employees expect transparency and they expect that they understand. So I'm going to talk about psychological safety, not in the general term, but more in the
Right.
term of what it means for AI and tech, right? So
Right.
people need to understand where decisions came from, and they need to understand where AI was part of the decision making. And to do that, to be able to understand this, they need to have this literacy, this AI literacy, right? And we need to, for example, consent them every time we will be using AI to monitor them, for example, or monitor their behaviors, even if it's not like through surveillance or so on. Even monitor their clicking behavior on the screen, right? Or where AI will enter and coach them or give them recommendations or so on and so forth. So they need to be informed, they need to be literate and understand how AI can, how and where AI will enter to set certain recommendations, and that they do have the right to, I would say, choose and pick from those recommendations, and that the final accountability it will remain ultimately on people. So that will never change. We are what programs and what educates AI at the end of the day, and accountability will remain with people. So people need to be aware of that. You can't just hold them accountable for something that they're totally unaware of, or that they thought that they could have over reliance on, and not really be able to defend themselves when they need to, right? So that's really what I meant by psychological safety AI.
Right. Do you see the technology industry, which is huge, sort of meeting the mark? Are they doing what they should, and do they meet your needs and the norms at the moment?
So yeah, so let me really be very frank. There are a lot of things. If I would ask the tech industry for certain solutions, or not even solutions, but rather, better ways of working, I would say yes, I do have a long list of things that I would ask for. So so essentially, user interface, that is one that is very, very important. So there is something that is very common. We say, if it takes more than 3 clicks to reach the solution or the request or so on, that would probably be too long, and people would be disengaged, basically. So that's one ask. So really user interface and simplicity. I'm sorry. So I was saying, I was first discussing the part on user interface, and another one is also simplification. So really, not everyone that uses those systems or processes are essentially very deeply, I would say, aware of what they're doing. So we need to make it as simple as possible. So that is something that I think is very important. And long decision making processes, or long decision making trails, and long approval processes are one thing that really set people back from using such systems and so on. Again, the part where people need to be informed and need to be, as I said, consented for having an AI element that will be part of the system or process. That is an essential one, as I mentioned before, and that is a very critical one that I see is going to be more and more of a pressing need for people to feel like they want to engage with those systems. Otherwise, they're just going to avoid wanting to, and they're going to feel like they're in one way or another being monitored or tracked, and they will be ultimately blamed for it at some point, right? So that's one thing. Another thing is having a holistic or a one-stop shop for EHS systems. So one of the chronic pain points that we always had is that those EHS management systems or reporting systems or so on, they were all like siloed systems, and there could be up to 5, 6, or even 10 of those applications that someone has to use. And maybe some things have to be used by frontline, other things have to be used by leadership. And then we have a whole set of, dashboards that we're asking the senior leaders to look at. And all of this needs to be in one place. That is, I think, one of probably the biggest challenges that we have in EHS at the moment. And not just for the convenience or the accessibility of people, but it's rather for linking the information together and really creating those synergies between the data points that are being inputted or being generated by the system, so that we can make better use out of like each and every single piece of data that's being entered into the system, right? So really integrating things like audit findings with incident investigations, with learning from previous incidents, and so on and so forth. All those kinds of things need to come together, rather than an EHS professional having to spend hours and days and weeks reviewing and linking, making those manual links between the information. So now we have AI that can help us, pull up to speed with that, and that will essentially impact the speed of decision making of our leaders as well, and the quality, not just the speed. So we will be better reliant on good quality data that allows us to take better decisions. So these, I would say, are some of the wishes that I have from the systems and the developers in the field now.
That's really, really useful. Now, you mentioned AI literacy a couple of times. So allow me to ask you, what does that mean in practice? Because what we have seen in our work is that all the industrial engineers, chemical, mechanical, instrumentation, metallurgy, they understand the industry very well, and software engineers, of course, understand their discipline really well. These two groups don't really understand each other a whole lot. And technicians and
Yes.
as a manager and all that. What does AI literacy mean for you in practice?
So what it really means is that I think I think EHS professionals at some point thought that everyone's going to come to them, and it's probably the opposite. You need to go out there and grab those people that need to be around your table. So and now it's not just HR, and it's not just operations, and it's not just compliance and ethics or legal. You need to get more people around the table, and one essential party is that related to digital or IT or whatever function it is called within your organization that needs to be there. And through this specific party, you'll be able to get external developers or startups or people that are working in those fields that know best what is the latest use or what is the latest tool that could help you reach what you want, right? Or realize what you want. So I think it's really getting out there and exploring. The EHS professional has to take the step. They have to be the one that is looking for help. I think we got used to, as EHS professionals, being asked for help, and that is not the entire sentence, right? The next part of this sentence is that you need to go out there and look for help, whether it's internally through the different functions, the digitization or the digital transformation function within your organization, or whether it's externally. As I said, you need to explore, you need to find those innovators out there, those people with the great minds that can help you solve certain pain points and chronic issues within your organization.
Right. One practical challenge that we often see in our work is that the industrial world is just full of unstructured information sources. So there are technical diagrams, there are OEM manuals, there are training manuals, and all kinds of things where the information is there, but it rarely gets utilized in the right way. So how do you think AI can help you when the unstructured information, unstructured data element? How to extract useful intelligence and information out of PDFs, paper, manuals, and so on? Is this something you have personally faced in your organization?
I think I think this is all up to how you. It's all up to the algorithms that you put in, right? It's all up to how you develop your AI to help you. So again, it's not a straightforward answer, because your question could be to an organization that has AI, has its own AI, or it's an organization that uses the more general, the wider population AI. So I'm not going to be able to answer it in a straightforward manner, but more what I want to highlight is that it's really up to the algorithms that you put in and how you want to link information to each other. And it's also up to up to the culture within the organization, the culture of the leadership that allows them to understand that the algorithms could be set in the wrong way at the beginning, or they could be imperfect at the beginning. You need to go back and keep reviewing and revising those and updating those algorithms to better reflect what you want to see and how you want to interpret the data, and how this will help you and give you insights to be able to prevent incidents in the future and protect people in the future, right? So expecting that you will have the perfect algorithm before you start is probably not the most agile and adaptive way of doing things. We need to shift into, so usually they say EHS professionals are not risk takers, which is a little bit true, I would say, but this is one of the things that I would say EHS professionals have to evolve, and they have to be able to have this capacity in their minds that they and the team will have this trial and error phase, and it's better than being stuck back in the manual phase where you have to do it all yourself, right? It's better to take the time and invest the time in this trial and error in a low risk environment, where you will be able to get better insights at the end. So I think this is essentially where we need to focus, to be able to utilize the data that we have, rather than being stuck somewhere where we're just afraid or fearful of taking this risk.
Fantastic. Yes, Jignesh, you had a question. Please go ask.
Thanks, Doha. Specifically on that front, I would like to ask you one more question on that. So across industries, digitalization in safety is still a nice to have thing. It's not a must have thing. So do you think it should be must have thing across EHS function in the industries?
Yes, absolutely. Like, this is just like saying, um, it's just no longer possible. It's just like you're saying, I'm gonna go through the day without getting any water. It's just not possible, and and you can get through the day without getting any water, but you're the one that's missing out, right? You're the one that's missing out on a lot of benefits. So I would say digitization is the first step. So really converting your paper and manual processes into digitized versions, and then digitalization. So really holding a process from end to end, and transforming it into a a digital process, including approvals, including communication, including all those sorts of things. And then digital transformation maybe comes at a later stage. So what I'm saying is the digitization, I would say, is a non-negotiator. You cannot negotiate that. Maybe the digital transformation is something that I would say, yes, not a lot of companies have done, especially in the EHS field. And yes, you might not choose to do it, at least within the next maybe 5 years. But I think it will be more and more of a pressing need in the future. So whether you like it or not, we're going to need to integrate EHS into other processes that are a wider or bigger digital transformation initiative within the organization, like something related to supply chain or strategy or whatever it is. But we will need to integrate and hold hands with those. Otherwise, you're just going to be left behind, which is something that we were always complaining from as EHS professionals. So this is your opportunity. Get out and grab it.
Right. So just a quick background about myself. I was refinery operator. Then I became AI sailor. I was also been a part of top tier consulting firms on the strategy and operations benchmarking. So out of my whole career journey, I have seen one basic pain in the EHS function. For example, like you are already leading the leadership role at one of the biggest FMCG company in the region. So when word digital EHS comes out during the meetings, how top management reacts on that word actually?
Actually, the reaction is very positive, but that's not the problem. The reaction is not the problem. The reaction is, do you stand up for or insist on having that implemented as a digital or digitalization initiative? Do you stand up for it when there is a budget issue, when there is a cost cutting rollout across the organization? Do you stand up for it as strongly as you were excited during that meeting where you first saw the initiative? That's the thing. And I think it's not like I cannot blame one specific party for that. But what I can tell you is that I always reflect on the EHS professionals rather than anything else, because this is, we need to start with ourselves, right? So I think
Right.
we need to get better at selling those initiatives or marketing those initiatives. And we need to do that. We need to have better business language. We need to have better results or ROI that reflects the benefits to the organization. And we need to set the scene as if we are partnering with the other functions. We are part of the business strategy, and the benefits will impact the business strategy. So we need to make those links between our results as EHS and the overall business strategy, rather than just getting in there and showing them some safety metrics, because that's not what leaders want to see anymore, right? It's really getting that overall picture. And if you were able to set it as an essential part of your business strategy, and the benefits of it can be strongly linked, at that point where you have that budget discussion and there are budget cuts, they won't be able to separate that meat from the bone, you know? It will just not be separable. They won't be compromising this initiative as the first one, because it only impacts safety. If it impacts across the board, things across the board, different aspects and elements across the board, I'm pretty confident that it will be a keeper.
Right. So, in our experience, what we have experienced till so far, AI is a buzzword. People want AI in breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So, from the EHS perspective, what are those top three priorities industry want from AI?
Yeah, that's not an easy question, because we have a lot of pain points as well. So I'm just gonna say it depends on the industry that you're in, I guess. But maybe if I just answer from my background in the consumer packaged goods or manufacture, or like the food and beverage industry, I would say the top three, maybe not in order. I would say the first one is really AI in managing critical risks like driving, or things like confined space inspections, or working at height inspections, those sorts of like high risk activities or high risk jobs or tasks that that AI could eliminate or significantly reduce the exposure of people to fatal risk, right? So that would be the top one that comes to mind, that this is like essentially the purpose of our functions. So if we don't make good use of that, then we're not really focusing in the right place. The second one for me would be the systems one that I mentioned earlier, which is really having a one-stop shop and an AI feature or an AI agent that can help you, give you recommendations in your risk assessment, your risk evaluation, your risk controls, your incident investigations, in terms of how the quality of incident investigation. So is it really holistic? Is it complete? Is it adequate? Do you have all the data points entered? So really checking not just the elements of incident investigation, but also the quality of what you're entering. So really like those AI coaches that you have on Microsoft Pilot, for example, where they're like coaching you on certain things that you certain entries that you make. So that sort of thing. And of course, it could be used in many other things, like linking this information from incident investigations, audit findings, so on and so forth, and giving you those insights. Because also leaders don't want to see 1,000 dashboards anymore. They don't have the time to do that. At one point in time, we were really pressing on leaders to go in and you need to check the dashboards, you need to have a look at the trends and so on and so forth. But really, it's not their area of expertise. So we as EHS professionals ourselves, we struggle sometimes to make those data links and to make those to like generate those insights ourselves, right? Without AI. So let alone leaders that have like 1,000 other things going around and so much noise around their heads from the day-to-day business or the overall business challenges, right? So this, I would say, like creating the insights and really guidance or support or coaching during the certain processes of EHS is the second one. And the third one is really using AI in making EHS a more interesting topic, right? So really using it in things like training, and I don't mean like classroom training, but really developing more creative training content that is more immersive, that is more engaging, that is more capturing, that sort of thing. Using it in things like culture campaigns or communication, that sort of thing as well. So really making it, shiny and nice, that sort of thing. So maybe the last one is a nice to have, but it's really an essential nice to have, right? It would be really great to make EHS a fun and exciting and amazing function, the likes of things like marketing, for example, where you have uh, advertisements that are very shiny or niche or luxurious or funny, that sort of thing. So, and people really engage with it. So that's the sort of like really using AI for engaging people and making it an exciting topic rather than you did this and we need to do that kind of thing. It's not a policing function anymore.
Yeah, thanks, Doha. We are just short of time. So just a last question from my end. Most AI companies commit that with AI you can optimize the manpower. On other hand, industry's expectation is we do not want to optimize the manpower because they are our future leaders. So what should be the win-win ground for both of them?
Is that like in a more general form or is that in the EHS field specifically?
Please, towards EHS.
Right. So look, there's always going to be this great example that you can give. So there are companies that use it um, to reduce the headcount, heavily reduce the headcount. And I'm not really going to dwell on those. There are so many companies that have done that and are still doing that, eliminating people, just as if AI is the solution to everything, which it is clearly not, right? Um, so I think the good example that I want to give is things like IKEA. So they used AI in certain things, for example, as in certain parts of their operation. Let's say I don't want to go into specifics, but uh, where it could have replaced people, they've taken those people and they've invested in giving them trainings and education, further development and growth in terms of design, interior design, and so on and so forth. And so the short answer is you don't need to let people go. You just need to make better use of people because we always, especially if I speak of the EHS profession, we never made good use of people. So we were always 70, 80% drowning under administrative roles where our real impact on our real results are should have been coming from interactions with leaders and interactions with frontline. So, and AI cannot replace those interactions, at least not for the time being, not until we have those robots that are, agentic robots going around, figuring everything out. So that's not going to happen for the next maybe at least 20 years, not 20. Okay. 20 is an overstatement, maybe 10 years. Okay. So we still have some time. That's what I want to say. So, and you don't need to let your people go. You need to find better utilization for them. Now, if an organization chooses to is just heavily focused on costs and cost cutting and that is their absolute and ultimate goal. And it could be sometimes because of competition or being in a survival mode or so on and so forth. Then you can't also blame them, right, in the bigger picture. But I would say if an organization is in a stable form, it's just trying to grow and compete and so on, they should leverage their human capital rather than just cutting it out because now we have AI.
Thanks, Dua.
And,
Thank you so much for your
sorry,
yeah.
I just want to add one thing to that. So now AI is free, right? At least in the wider form, and it's being offered to organizations. I'm not going to say at an extensive cost yet. AI is in the next 5 years. There are so many things and so many studies and so many reports saying that it's going to be extremely expensive. So if you're choosing to cut out your headcount, your human headcount now because it's expensive, you need to have a better foresight or insight into the future that they will be much less expensive and they will be much more beneficial and I would say impactful to keep rather to cut them down now, and then you will need to look into it again in the future where you will find much lower caliber and much lower interest in you as an organization because you let them off before, right? So again, unless you are doing this as a survival mode because you're gonna go bankrupt or you're gonna lose business if you don't let them go, then you really shouldn't be taking that path.
Right, absolutely right. Thank you so much, Doha, for your wonderful time and sharing the real challenges behind it. Since long, Somak has raised his hand. So yeah, Somak, please, over to you. Thanks.
So lastly, Doha, it's a time of a lot of change. The quantum of change is pretty huge. And a function that is undergoing so much change, that quantum of change needs a leadership philosophy that is deliberate, that is intentional, that is transformational. And I know that you write a fair bit on leadership on LinkedIn. What is your leadership philosophy, and how do you see this? How do you see leaders who are equipped for this, for steering this change over the next few years in the HS function?
So so again, I'm going to stress on this again. You need to nurture or develop and nurture psychological safety within your organization. That is essential. I'm not going to let go of that. And we spoke about that already. Another thing is we need to it's very simple, right? We need to move away from having this direction and policing or
Right.
directive style and policing into collaboration, more into being business partners. Uh, the no blame game is a very old one, but we didn't get the hang of it. We need to get the hang of it. It's no longer there's no time to blame anyone. We need to, fall, learn, get up, and run. Not even walk. We need to run after falling, right? So there's no time to blame people. It's rather learning and taking those learnings and cascading them across the board, and not just cascading them in the traditional way that we are doing now or that we used to do before. There needs to be better governance about how the learnings are cascaded and actually replicated across your organization. We need to shift into more of a learning organization um, rather than just investigating one certain case and implementing the actions in a certain spot or in a certain place, and that's it. We need to be better about really making sure that it's being implemented across the board in a way that will prevent that incident from happening somewhere else, or even in the same place, of course. So that's another thing. Really, coaching and mentoring is probably something that you're not going to be able to get by with the next generations if you don't follow this, or if you don't adopt this mindset. They're not into this directive style anymore. You need to have this coaching and mentoring, and we need to educate ourselves as EHS leaders as to how to be able to do that upwards and downwards. So to frontline and towards leadership as well, because they as well need to be educated, not technically. They don't need to understand EHS technically. They need to understand what we want to achieve and how that benefits the system. And that is the link that the EHS professionals need to make. So I think there's plenty of shifts that we as EHS professionals need to make. One of them is what I mentioned before, is that we need to have a more adaptive style and a more and a better capacity to take risks in low risk environments, and adopt trial and error where we can, where it will not affect people, where it will not harm people or the environment. So we need to shift into that, from this rigid personality or character into a more adaptive character. So if you look at like certain studies, you will find that things like adaptive and research, late research from, for example, the World Economic Forum, you'll find that the most important behaviors or characters that you need to have are things like collaboration, adaptability, resilience, that sort of thing. And those are all very, very meaningful and very, very relevant to our function. So it's really not about firefighting anymore, and it's not about blaming, and it's not about policing. The whole shift is into being strategic, collaborative, a business partner, and really being able to link what is happening with technology and AI with humans, because this is going to be really our next challenge. The risks are also changing. Mental health, as I said, is one of the most emerging risks now, and it's estimated to cost at least the US in billions of dollars in the next 10 years. So we really need to understand those emerging risks and be able to plan for them very early ahead, because we are not at the speed of AI. So, and we will need to set this direction. So we need to plan it way ahead of time.
Thank you, Doha. We learned a lot over the last hour, and I used to be an analyst with Forrester before I joined Maximal, and I've spoken to a lot of executives, but really, rarely you speak with a executive where the conversation is extremely insight rich and information dense. So thanks a lot, and thank you for your time. And everybody, listen to this conversation and replay it to learn more about HSE than you knew before. So thanks a lot, and we'll be back with a new episode soon. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ignis. Thanks, Doha. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nasha, it was really a pleasure. I really enjoyed the past hour, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure is all ours. This has been an honor. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye.